I just watched Netflix's Painkiller. In this video, we're covering 5 of the main marketing strategies I saw that were used to launch OxyContin to bring it to over $30 billion for Purdue Pharma in its time. Now, this is a horrifying adaptation of real events that led to America's opioid crisis. A little disclaimer, by me creating this content, I in no way support or condone any actions that were taken by Purdue Pharma in the release of OxyContin. This video is used for educational purposes only to show when good marketing strategies are used for bad. Bit of a backstory, before Purdue launched OxyContin in 1996, they had a drug called MS-Contin. It was a very stable palliative care drug that was used for years to treat severe pain, almost exclusively for end-of-life care. And that was also what the public's perception of MS-Contin was, death. And at the time, Purdue was facing bankruptcy and they needed a new drug with a broader market appeal that would bring in the money and hopefully solve their financial problems. And they also wanted to bring a new drug in that didn't have such a negative association. So they worked a plan to make a similar drug with the limited resources they had. So they made this new version more potent, they changed the chemistry, they changed the name. This is where marketing comes in. It's important to understand the thought process that led to an evolution from MS-Contin to the blockbuster OxyContin, because it backs up how effective our first marketing principle is, which is pain versus pleasure. The character of Richard Sackler, played by Matthew Broderick in the show, began this process with an age-old marketing theory. Human behavior is driven by 2 things. We run away from pain, or we run toward pleasure.
All of human behavior is essentially comprised of 2 things. Run from pain, run toward pleasure.
And it's a straightforward principle, but it's also at the heart of every choice that we make, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. And understanding this and the motivation behind your customer is a game changer in marketing. So Purdue Pharma used the pain versus pleasure principle to shift the conversation. Here's what I mean. MS-Contin at the time was associated with helping people move away from pain. That was the promise, that was the basis of their marketing. Now the opportunity with OxyContin was a clean slate. MS-Contin publicly was associated with death. Now, OxyContin, there was a new opportunity to have that associated as helping people have more pleasure in their life. Essentially, their promise was to not have to manage pain, but to get your life back. And that shift was a very different but subtle difference, that there was a bigger motivator for anyone suffering with pain to actually want to get their life back. So OxyContin was used toward pleasure in this case. And brands that have figured out how to implement the pain versus pleasure principle have not just succeeded, they've revolutionized industries. Take Dyson for an example. Before they came to market, they developed their product to solve a very real pain point in the industry, that homeowners could not stand the bulky vacuums that literally sucked. And they were such a pain to take out, they made cleaning your house really annoying. Dyson came in and reinvented a sleek, lightweight, powerful vacuum that actually made it enjoyable and easy to clean your house. And at this point, vacuum wasn't just selling vacuums. They were selling a better solution to actually make housework almost enjoyable. So when we look at the essence of what Dyson had created, they weren't just selling vacuums. They actually created a new way of life to make it almost enjoyable to vacuum your floors. If we look at Purdue Pharma's marketing for OxyContin, they did hone in on people's desire to escape pain, promising transformative relief and moving toward pleasure. And yes, while it did offer that relief to many, they failed to communicate the potential dangers of how addictive OxyContin was. And their misuse and manipulation of the pain versus pleasure principle resulted in consequences that we're still dealing with today. Principle number 2 is the big promise. Now, Painkiller opens up with episode 1 with one of the characters saying that pain is no longer something we need to tolerate. It's something we can overcome. This is the launch pad of the belief system that Purdue Pharma wanted to instill in America and have people believe about their product. Now, this is a hidden compass that guides our choices, and it's called the Big Promise. A big promise is something that brands put forth to help us gain trust that their product is going to do exactly what it says. So when brands deliver on this pledge, magic happens. Trust is built, and an example is Apple. They don't just promise innovative tech and nice, sleek designs. They actually commit to an ecosystem of sleek design, efficiency, and seamless interconnectivity with their devices. And when they consistently deliver on this, it's not just about a product anymore. This becomes an experience bigger than the brand, a bond between you and the company, and eventually fostering brand loyalty. However, that trust is delicate, so if it's mishandled, it can break, just like Purdue Pharma did with OxyContin. Their claim was powerful, that pain isn't forever. Let's overcome it together. But they backed this up with a promise of the FDA's endorsement and even put pressure behind the doctors to prescribe it in high doses, really consistently distilling that belief with the population. But throughout all of this, all of the risks of how addictive OxyContin was being ignored. And of course, this came back to bite them, spoiler alert, but the message is clear. Your big promise is the bond that you're creating with your customers. It is your promise of what your product will bring into their life. Principle number 3 is perception. So transforming and building perceptions isn't just about identifying the pain and pleasure points and creating a belief. When we take this a step into perception, Purdue didn't just offer a pill. They sold a dream, a vision of a life where pain was something of the past. Really, it gave people their life back. And how did they do this? Well, they had 2 key strategies they built on to build the perception that OxyContin was that miracle drug. The first thing they did was secure the FDA's approval for OxyContin, and for many, this stamp of legitimacy resonates with one word: safety. This drug is safe. And Purdue knew that the difference between a mediocre company and a profitable one is perception. So when the clinical trial numbers came back not supporting the story of a nearly non-existent addiction rate, Richard Sackler used these numbers to tell the story that the FDA wanted to hear versus the story of what the numbers actually painted. Perception is really powerful. It becomes the subconscious association that customers have with your brand. So things like the status, quality, if it's cheap, if it's unreliable. But here's the thing, with that kind of power, you have to be really responsible. So making people see things a certain way is an art, but you have to be honest about it. Brands tell stories often shaped by numbers. So when it comes to crafting the narrative, it's about framing the relevant data compellingly to tell the story the way you want it to, but not twisting it. This is a fine line because numbers can build or break a story. They can be your champion or your adversary. And for instance, a brand that promotes a sustainable product might highlight things such as, this is 95% biodegradable packaging, or we use 80% recycled materials, thus helping earn your customer trust. But there is a darker side, and Purdue chose that route, and that is where OxyContin's narrative came into as a perfect example. So despite having troubling clinical data around addiction rates, they focused on select metrics to underplay risks in their FDA application. So, for example, they took a decades-old letter to the editor from the New England Journal of Medicine, took one line out of it, and made that a favorable point and cited it as a credible study. Principle number 5 is MICE. The acronym, not the little fuzzy creature. Have you ever heard of MICE? It's a tactic straight out of the CIA's playbook that is used to flip an asset or win people over. So here is what it stands for. M stands for money. It's our universal language. So if we think about it, in using discounts, loyalty rewards, or even straightforward pricing discounts, it's all about perceived value. I is for ideology. So what do people believe in? It's our deep-seated beliefs or the causes that we get behind and the lines that we don't cross. So how can a brand echo these convictions? For example, sustainability, very likely people who are eco-conscious will be purchasing your product because they believe in your brand values and it lines up. C is for coercion. And yeah, that sounds menacing, but it means what do your customers fear? And when we apply that marketing principle to your product, how does your product help solve that problem in your customer's life? How does it help prevent that pain? Maybe literally it doesn't help prevent that pain, but maybe it help enables a form of pleasure, just like we did going back to principle number 1. And then lastly, E for ego. Who doesn't want to feel special? Whether it's being part of an exclusive club or just really being recognized for their loyalty. While in the example of Purdue Pharma, they abused mice to get the FDA on their side, but mice can be used for good. When a brand uses it to understand how to tap into the hidden motivators to flip your customers and get them what you want them to do, which is buy your product, these are little levers that we have. We've covered 5 deep marketing tactics, and while they're powerful, they're also tools. And the real challenge is going to be using them effectively, and just as importantly, ethically. So I want to make sure that this video does not come off as demonizing marketing or some of these tactics used, but more the reason behind why they're used. This video is a way to educate people about these methods and shed light on how they work, and most importantly, show that just like with power, we have to use these tools responsibly. And hey, your thoughts matter to us. Have you seen any of these tactics used in action? Have any worked on you? Was it a positive, negative experience? Let me know in the comments. And just remember, closing remark, use this knowledge wisely, stay informed, and always act with integrity. Outside of that, thank you for liking and subscribing to this video. I'll see you in the next one.